Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
Welcome back to Dark Poutine. I am Mike Brown here in Langley, British Columbia, where it's getting warmer.
And I'm Matthew, and I'm omnipresent.
You're omnipresent? You are everywhere all at once?
I am wherever my voice is right now in your radio.
We are pouring Dark Poutine into your ears currently.
I am with you in your car.
Turn right.
Can we stop for a pee break and some candy?
Road snacks for our road trip.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of Curious Cast, its affiliate, Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We're two ordinary Canadian schmucks chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, grab yourself a double-double and a Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some Dark Poutine.
You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining at your own cost all equipment needed to listen to Dark Poutine. Dark Poutine can be addictive. Side effects may include, but not be limited to, pausing and questioning the system, elevated heart rate, pondering humanity, odd looks from colleagues as you laugh out loud at work, family members not into true crime worrying about you. Positive side effects may include some perspectives and opinions that you disagree with, as well as some wokeness and empathy. If you don't think Dark Poutine is for you, consult your doctor immediately.
In the early hours of Valentine's Day 2013, the world awoke to the shocking news that South African Olympic and Paralympic hero Oscar Pistorius had shot and killed his girlfriend, 29-year-old paralegal and model Reeva Steenkamp, inside his Pretoria home. Pistorius, celebrated for overcoming the loss of his legs to become a global sporting icon, was now accused of a crime that would grip and divide a nation. The ensuing investigation and trial, marked by intense media scrutiny, conflicting testimonies, and a dramatic courtroom battle, would raise questions about celebrity, violence, and the quality of justice in South Africa. This is Dark Poutine episode 367, Road Trip, the murder of Reeva Steenkamp. While many stories about this case begin with a biography of the famous perpetrator, in this, our first road trip in some time, we're starting with a life story of the victim, Reeva Steenkamp. Much of it is taken from her mother June's book, Reeva, A Mother's Story. Reeva Rebecca Steenkamp was born in Cape Town, South Africa on August 19, 1983. During that year, South Africa, and Cape Town in particular, were gripped by deepening political tension and mounting resistance against the apartheid regime. The government, led by the National Party, attempted to reform its rigid system of racial segregation by introducing a new constitution that year. This constitution established a tricameral parliament granting limited political representation to, quote, colored and Indian groups, end quote, but continued to exclude the black African majority from any national political participation. Anti-apartheid activists widely criticized the move as a divisive tactic designed to fracture opposition and maintain white minority rule. Cape Town became a focal point of resistance. On August 20th, 1983, the day after Reeva Steenkamp was born, the United Democratic Front, UDF, was launched in Rocklands, Mitchell's Plain, Cape Town, uniting a wide array of civic, religious, and community organizations in opposition to apartheid and the new constitution. The UDF quickly became a powerful legal vehicle for organizing mass protests and campaigns, particularly in the city's colored and African townships where discontent was rising. Simultaneously, the government's policy of forced removals continued to devastate communities with vibrant multiracial neighborhoods like District 6 in Cape Town being bulldozed to enforce racial segregation. The climate was volatile, characterized by increasing unrest, the formation of new alliances among trade unions and civic groups, and a government response that relied heavily on repression and state violence to quell dissent. This period set the stage for more intense confrontations and states of emergency that would define South Africa's political landscape in the mid-1980s and was particularly of interest to Reeva as she grew up.
Lots of us know about the 80s, South Africa.
Yep.
But by the mid-90s, I actually almost bought a house in Cape Town.
Really?
In an area called Die Waterkant Village. It's a sub-district of Greenpoint. It's essentially the gay village in Cape Town.
Okay.
And it has like this really cute buildings that are sort of like Cape Dutch and Georgian architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, back then in the mid-90s, like I've spent a lot of time in South Africa, of course. There's a lot of hope back then in South Africa, but a lot has changed. You know, since the mid-2000s, especially under Jacob Zuma, state corruption was rampant and seriously undermined key public services and infrastructure in that country. Even today, right now, as we speak, if somebody's listening in South Africa, their lights might be going out because there's rolling electricity blackouts. The corruption was that bad, right? And water and sanitation is becoming an issue, and education outcomes are really bad. You know, I think GDP has stagnated for the last number of years, and unemployment's super high. Like, Mike, imagine it's like 32% generally, but 60% unemployment amongst the youth.
So the youth are probably really angry.
Right. And violent crime is a serious issue. So South Africa ranks among the worst countries in terms of murder and sexual violence rates. But, you know, the good news is South Africa remains relatively robust as a constitutional democracy with a free press, which actually, in fact, does a lot of investigation on corruption, right? They have a active civil society and an independent judiciary, which is good and important. And I still hold out hope for the country because I've always found it a beautiful country with a lot of wonderful people. But, you know, right now it has its issues.
Yeah, I have other friends who are South African and say, yeah, don't go.
If you go to Cape Town in tourist season and you stay to certain areas, you're okay.
You'll be okay.
Yeah, and just don't do stupid shit.
I'm known for my stupid shit, Matthew. Jeez. Reeva arrived 2 years after her mother, June, born Marshall and previously Cowburn, and Barry Steenkamp, a horse trainer, were married. Both Reeva's parents had been married before. June had given birth to her daughter Simone 18 years prior when she was with her first husband Tony back home in Lancashire, England. Barry also had a son, Adam, from his previous marriage. 18-year-old Simone was smitten with her baby sister and loved to hold little Reeva. The Steenkamp family ran the Burley Equestrian Center in a suburb of Cape Town and cared for 160 horses. As well as hosting show jumping and other equestrian events, June ran a small restaurant on the site before Reeva's birth. However, June decided to take time off work during Reeva's first 4 years to ensure her little girl had the right start with lots of love and attention. Horses were still a big part of their lives, and Reeva took her first pony ride when she was just 2 years old. Reeva's idyllic childhood was not without its challenges. At around 5 or 6 years old, she underwent a tonsillectomy paid for by her grandmother. After returning from the hospital, her parents followed the nurse's advice and gave her ice cream to soothe her throat. However, a few hours later, Reeva awoke crying and began vomiting blood. Her parents rushed her back to the hospital where a family friend, an anesthetist, quickly called a surgeon to repair the wound. It was later revealed that the original surgeon, distracted by personal issues, had made errors with several patients that day, and all 5 girls he operated on required further treatment. Reeva's parents anxiously watched over her hospital bed, but she made a full recovery. In 1990, 7-year-old Reeva attended her first horse show at the Western Province Horse Society Summer Show. She was riding a pony named Pinto. She charmed the judges with her personality, winning 7 rosettes, including one for Best Walk, more for her charisma than her riding skills. After Pinto, Reeva rode Ziggy Stardust, and when Ziggy had a foal, she moved on to gentle, elderly A-grade ponies chosen for their safety. Her family enjoyed a vibrant social life at the stables, though Reeva was less horse-obsessed than the others. She loved following the vet around and once, imitating him, tried to inject Pinto with a plastic syringe, nearly getting kicked for her efforts. Reeva's childhood was filled with freedom and joy. She played with friends, explored the stables, and participated in fancy dress parties. Her birthdays were always celebrated, and every Christmas Barry dressed as Father Christmas for the children at Burleigh. Unlike other girls, Reeva preferred cars to dolls, often asking Santa for a garage for her car collection. In those days, she was called a tomboy and seemed to be happiest when she was outdoors. After completing her schooling at St. Dominic's Priory in Port Elizabeth, Reeva enrolled at Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University to study law. Driven and hard-working, Reeva excelled in her studies, but her final year was disrupted by a serious horse-riding accident that left her with 2 crushed vertebrae. She lay in traction for weeks, uncertain if she would ever walk again, but ultimately made a full recovery and graduated at the top of her class in 2005. Despite her academic success, Reeva's dreams of practicing law were temporarily set aside as she focused on paralegal work and applied to the bar in 2011, aiming to become a legal advocate before age 30. She also harbored ambitions of starting a law firm to help abused women after having been abused by a previous boyfriend. This also reflected her deep compassion and commitment to social justice.
The fact that she wanted to be a lawyer to help women who've been abused and what happens to her, it's chilling how that's connected to her own fate.
Yep, 100%. And this is why I chose this episode to do, because it did speak to that. I mean, I've known about this case, as many people do, but I wanted to investigate her as a human being because we've heard about Oscar endlessly.
Yeah.
The Blade Runner, blah, blah, blah. But I really wanted to know, who is this woman who he shot through the door? And I feel like we are really getting at least a bit of a better look at who she is.
I'm 1 degree of separation from her. I'll talk about that a little bit later.
I'm curious to hear the details. Alongside her legal aspirations, Reeva's modeling career flourished. She began modeling in her teens, quickly gaining recognition and becoming the first face of Avon Cosmetics in South Africa. Her striking looks and charismatic presence led to appearances in FHM magazine, television commercials, and reality TV shows including Tropica Island of Treasure and Baking Made Easy. By 2011 and 2012, she was ranked among FHM's 100 Sexiest Women in the World by South African readers. Reeva used her growing celebrity to campaign against sexual violence and support animal welfare charities. She was known for her warmth, wit, and determination. Despite being focused on multiple serious causes, Reeva's sense of humor was legendary among her friends. Journalist Hagen Engler wrote about Reeva, quote, "We followed each other on Twitter and Facebook, where her wicked, almost scatological sense of humor came into its own. Geez, she could be funny," end quote.
You know, that line right there makes me realize, like, she and I would have been buddies.
Yeah.
You know, my sense of humor.
Me too.
You know, like at one time in my life, I hung out with a crowd. It was this weird crowd of people. We did lots of traveling and parties together. We'd like literally, a party would be held in a country and we would all fly there.
Sure.
So an interesting bunch. And within this group of friends was actually, I think at the time, she's the richest woman in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
And Reeva actually did some modeling for one of her brands.
Okay.
And so this woman had met her. And so that's my sort of 1 degree of separation from
Wow.
her.
Mm-hmm.
And like she was a big model at the time, Mike.
Yeah, she really was.
She wasn't, oh, I'm a model, right? Okay, you know, like you got some snaps done in a shopping mall.
No, it definitely wasn't. Yeah.
No, she was the big model. And I find her fascinating, right? She's this gorgeous woman, modeling, smart, lawyer, caring, right?
She was the total package.
Absolutely.
In pursuit of greater career opportunities, Reeva moved to Johannesburg, where she lived with close friends and continued to balance her modeling work with her legal ambitions. As we mentioned, she had experienced an emotionally abusive relationship in the past, and this deepened her resolve to advocate for women's rights and safety. By late 2012, Reeva was a well-known figure in South Africa, admired for her intelligence, beauty, and activism. Then in November 2012, she met Oscar Pistorius at an awards ceremony. The two quickly became a high-profile couple, often seen together at public events. At the time of her death in February 2013, Reeva was poised to further her legal career and expand her influence as a public figure. She was remembered by friends and colleagues as much more than a model. She was a woman of substance, empathy, and ambition. Oscar Leonard Carl Pistorius was born on November 22, 1986, in Sandton, Johannesburg, South Africa, to Hankie and Sheila Pistorius. He was the middle child in a family of 3 with an older brother and a younger sister. The Pistorius family was prominent in South Africa with a lineage that included Swiss and Italian ancestry. They spoke both Afrikaans and English at home. Both privilege and profound adversity shaped Oscar's early life. From birth, Pistorius faced a significant physical challenge. He was born with fibular hemimelia, a rare congenital condition that meant he had no fibula in either leg. After consulting with doctors, his parents made the difficult decision to have both of his legs amputated below the knee when he was just 11 months old. Fitted with prosthetic legs before he learned to walk, Oscar quickly adapted, mastering his prosthetics and learning to walk by 17 months. His parents, particularly his mother Sheila, instilled in him a spirit of determination and resilience, refusing to allow his disability to define or limit him. Oscar later credited his mother as a significant influence, recalling her insistence that, quote, no one was allowed to say, I can't, end quote. Despite his physical limitations, Pistorius was an exceptionally active and energetic child. He attended Constantia Kloof Primary School and later Pretoria Boys High School, participating in various sports. He played rugby for one of the school's teams, competed in water polo and tennis at the provincial level between the ages of 11 and 13, and participated in wrestling, boxing, and cricket. According to his early trainer, Janny Brooks, Oscar could perform exercises and activities with remarkable ease and enthusiasm despite being a double amputee. Oscar's childhood, however, was not without emotional hardship. His parents divorced when he was 6, leading to a strained relationship with his father, and his mother became his primary caregiver. The family dynamic shifted dramatically when Sheila died suddenly from complications following surgery when Oscar was just 15. This loss devastated him and marked a turning point in his adolescence, leaving him and his siblings to navigate life with little contact with their father. At age 16, while playing rugby, Pistorius suffered a severe knee injury that required surgery and rehabilitation. During his recovery, doctors recommended he take up running as part of his therapy. Initially, running was simply a means to regain strength in his knee, but Pistorius quickly discovered a natural talent and passion for sprinting. In January 2004, at 17, he competed in his first 100-meter race. Later that year, he participated in the 2004 Athens Paralympic Games, running on custom-made carbon fiber, quote, flex foot cheetah blades. Pistorius won gold in the 200-meter event with a time of 21.97 seconds and took bronze in the 100 meters, instantly drawing international attention for his speed and determination. The success in Athens ignited Pistorius' ambition to compete against other amputees and able-bodied athletes. Over the next several years, he continued to train and compete, breaking records and collecting medals at the South African Championships, the Paralympic World Cup, and other international events. His performances in the 100, 200, and 400-meter sprints established him as one of the world's top Paralympic athletes. However, Pistorius's rapid ascent was not without controversy. In 2007, the International Association of Athletes Federations, IAAF, questioned whether his carbon fiber prosthetics gave him an unfair advantage over able-bodied runners, citing biomechanical studies. After a lengthy debate and a scientific review, the IAAF ultimately ruled in 2008 that Pistorius could compete in able-bodied events as there was insufficient evidence to prove a competitive advantage. Pistorius's dream was realized in 2012 when he made history as the first double amputee to compete in the Olympic Games, running in the 400 meters and the 4x400 meter relay for South Africa in the London Olympics. His participation was celebrated worldwide as a triumph of human spirit and perseverance, earning him the nickname Blade Runner and making him a global icon for athletes with disabilities. Outside of athletics, Pistorius became a sought-after public figure, securing sponsorships and appearing in advertising campaigns. His story inspired millions and challenged perceptions about disability and athletic achievement. Yet he also faced personal challenges, including the ongoing impact of his mother's death, the complexities of fame, and the pressures of elite competition. Yet, as Oscar Pistorius' star rose, the world watched with admiration and curiosity. He had become a symbol of resilience, a man who had refused to be defined by his limitations and whose achievements on the track had inspired millions. He moved in celebrity circles, attended glamorous events, and was often photographed with South Africa's elite. To the outside world, Oscar seemed to have it all: fame, fortune, and the adoration of a nation. Beneath the surface, however, cracks began to show. The pressures of constant scrutiny, the relentless drive to be the best, and the lingering pain of his childhood losses all simmered beneath Oscar's confident exterior. Friends and those close to him sometimes glimpsed a different side, one of intensity, restlessness, and a fierce desire to protect what he had worked so hard to achieve. During this period, at the height of his fame, Oscar met Reeva Steenkamp, a radiant, ambitious model and law graduate who would soon become a central figure in his life. Their relationship blossomed quickly, capturing the attention of the media and public alike. But as their romance unfolded, so too did a series of events that would ultimately change Oscar's life forever and end Reeva's. What happened next would shock not only South Africa but the entire world. The story of Oscar Pistorius, once celebrated as the Blade Runner, would take a dramatic and tragic turn, impacting all who followed his journey. More after a quick break. And we are back. Matthew, thoughts at the halfway point?
Yeah, so, I doubt any of our listeners don't know this story. I'm not giving anything away here. But, I think that, in some ways, this case is a cautionary tale about the perils of hero worship and the importance of accountability. When all of this was happening, I can remember there's so many people that were jumping on the he didn't do it bandwagon, like right away, because they were enthralled with who he was and the image he had. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think he wasn't just a sports hero. At the time, he is kind of a symbol of the possibility in a country that was grappling with its identity. He was big. And, I think this made South Africa, or maybe should I say white South Africa, it made white South Africa confront some uncomfortable truths about partner violence, mm-hmm. as well as the dangers of unchecked celebrity, right? But that's all about Pistorius, right? And I think really the important part of this for me is for Reeva. Somebody who was, by all accounts, and even by people I've spoken to who have met her, as good as you see her to be in the media.
Right.
She was a good human being.
She was a good egg.
And she's somebody that could have done so much for South African society and women in South Africa had she not been murdered.
Yeah.
It's a big story because of all of these things.
Mm-hmm. On the evening of February 13, 2013, Oscar Pistorius and Reeva Steenkamp retired to bed in Pistorius's upscale Pretoria home. According to Pistorius's later testimony, the couple had spent a quiet evening together without indication of the tragedy to come. Neighbors recalled hearing little out of the ordinary as darkness settled over the estate. Like many in the area, Pistorius's home was equipped with extensive security features, high walls, electric fencing, and a sophisticated alarm system reflecting the persistent fear of crime in South Africa's wealthier, mostly white neighborhoods. Pistorius had spoken publicly about his anxieties regarding safety, once telling the New York Times, quote, "You can't relax, you can't sit back and say, it's fine now, the danger has passed," end quote. As Valentine's Day began in the early hours of February 14th, Pistorius would later describe waking abruptly in the darkness, sensing something was wrong. He claimed to have heard a noise from the bathroom, a small enclosed space just off the bedroom. The details of what happened next would become the subject of intense scrutiny and debate, but only Pistorius and Steenkamp were present in those moments. According to Pistorius's later statements to police, he awoke sometime after 3 a.m. He said he reached for his 9mm Taurus semi-automatic pistol, which he kept under his bed, and moved cautiously toward the bathroom. Pistorius, who had been sleeping without his prosthetic legs, moved on his stumps, something he said he did instinctively when he felt threatened, to make himself less visible and more difficult to attack. He called out in a whisper for Reeva to call police, believing she was still in bed behind him. The house was dark, the air tense with the fear that Pistorius had often spoken about. "I was overcome with terror," he would later recall. "I felt vulnerable as I always do at night, and I thought there was an intruder in the house." End quote. The bathroom door was closed and locked. Pistorius said he heard movement inside. Convinced that an intruder was hiding in there, he raised his pistol and fired 4 shots through the door. The shots rang out in quick succession, echoing through the quiet estate and shattering the pre-dawn stillness. In the immediate aftermath, Pistorius claimed he shouted for Reeva only to be met with silence. Panic set in as he realized she was not in bed. Quote, "I was screaming for her, praying she would answer," he recounted to police. In his version of events, the realization that Steenkamp might be in the bathroom struck him with overwhelming dread. Quote, "It was then that it dawned on me that it could be Reeva in the toilet," as later reported in South African media outlets such as News 24. Oscar said it was then that he rushed to the bathroom door, desperately trying to open it, but it was locked inside. In a frenzy, he ran back to the bedroom and grabbed a cricket bat, using it to smash a hole in the door. The sound of the bat striking the wood was described by neighbors as loud and frantic, followed by the unmistakable cries for help that pierced the early morning air. The weapon Pistorius used was a 9mm Taurus PT-917 CS, loaded with black talon hollow point ammunition, a type designed to expand upon impact, causing devastating injuries. Forensic investigators would later find 4 bullet holes clustered in the lower half of the door, evidence of the shots fired in rapid succession. Inside the cramped toilet cubicle, Reeva Steenkamp was struck by 3 of the 4 bullets. One shattered her right hip, another passed through her right arm, and a third hit her in the head. The wounds were catastrophic. According to the initial police report, quote, "The injuries were immediately life-threatening. There was significant blood loss and trauma," end quote. Blood spatter marked the walls and floor, and fragments of the door were scattered throughout the small space. The scene was one of chaos and horror. Pistorius, upon breaking open the door, found Steenkamp slumped over, her body crumpled against the toilet. He pulled her out of the cubicle and cradled her in his arms, sobbing and begging her to stay alive, he said. Pistorius's actions became increasingly desperate as the reality of what had happened set in. He carried Steenkamp's limp body downstairs, leaving a trail of blood through the house. At the foot of the stairs, he laid her on the floor and attempted to administer first aid. Neighbors, awakened by the gunshots and Pistorius's cries, rushed to the house. One neighbor, Dr. John Stipp, told reporters, quote, When I got there, Oscar was kneeling by her, trying to keep her airway open. He was crying, praying, and saying, "Reeva, please don't die." Emergency services were called at 3:19 a.m. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but there was little they could do. Reeva had already succumbed to her injuries. Pistorius, covered in blood, was described by witnesses as, quote, distraught, inconsolable, and in shock, end quote. He reportedly pleaded with the paramedics, "Please just let her live. Don't let her die on me," end quote. The frantic efforts to save Reeva Steenkamp's life were matched by Pistorius' attempts to explain what had happened. He told everyone present that he thought there was an intruder in the house, that he hadn't realized Reeva was in the bathroom. According to a police spokesman quoted in The Guardian, quote, "He was very emotional, very upset. He kept repeating that it was a mistake." Pistorius' neighbors described the scene as chaotic and heartbreaking. The sounds of his cries could be heard from outside the house, and his anguish was palpable. He made repeated calls for help, both to security staff at the estate and to close friends. One of those friends, Justin DeVaris, told the press, quote, "He called me and said, 'There has been a terrible accident. I shot Reeva.' I could hear he was devastated," end quote.
So my feeling here, Mike, is that after going into Red Rage and murdering her, he wished she was still alive and that he hadn't done it.
Right.
Because now he's suddenly seeing the implications of his actions, and all of what's going to happen to him is becoming clear.
Right.
So I actually think he probably was upset, but that was most likely about what was going to happen to him now.
Right.
He wanted her to be saved for him, not for her.
I agree with your assessment of this situation. Police arrived shortly after the paramedics. They found Oscar Pistorius in a state of shock, his clothes soaked in blood, and the house in disarray. Officers quickly secured the scene, cordoning off the house and beginning their investigation. They took Oscar aside, separating him from Reeva's body and the growing crowd of neighbors and estate staff. The investigators photographed the scene, collected evidence, including the firearm and the cricket bat, and interviewed witnesses. The bathroom door, with its gaping holes and bloodstains, became a focal point of the investigation. Police also took note of the extensive security measures in the home, raising questions about how an intruder could have entered undetected. A police spokesperson, Denise Bukes, told assembled reporters later that morning, quote, "There have previously been incidents and allegations of a domestic nature at the house," end quote. The comment, widely reported in the press, fueled speculation and concern about what might have led to the shooting. As the sun rose over Pretoria, the news of the shooting began to spread. Oscar Pistorius was taken into police custody from the scene and transported to a local station for questioning. By midday, authorities confirmed that he had been arrested and was facing a charge of murder. The announcement sent shockwaves through South Africa and the world. Police made it clear that they were treating the case with the utmost seriousness. Quote, "We found a young woman who had been shot, and we arrested the man who was present at the scene," Bukes stated. "He was cooperative, but he is now in our custody," end quote. The charge of murder rather than manslaughter or accidental death was a stark indication of the gravity with which police viewed the incident. News of the shooting broke rapidly, first on South African radio and then across international news outlets. Within hours, the story was headline news on the BBC, CNN, Sky News, and CBC. The image of Oscar Pistorius, once a symbol of triumph and inspiration, being led away by police in a gray tracksuit, head bowed, became an instant global sensation. South African media outlets scrambled to cover the developing story. EWN Eyewitness News reported, quote, "Oscar Pistorius, the country's golden boy, has been arrested for the murder of his girlfriend." The Star newspaper ran the headline, quote, "Blade Runner in the dock," reflecting the disbelief and shock felt by many. The public reaction was swift and deeply divided. Many South Africans, already grappling with high rates of violent crime, saw the incident as a tragic reflection of the country's broader struggles. Others were horrified by the suggestion that Pistorius, a national hero, could be capable of such violence. Social media exploded with commentary, speculation, and grief. The shooting also reignited debates about gun ownership and domestic violence in South Africa. The country has one of the highest rates of intimate partner violence in the world, and Steenkamp's death became a rallying point for activists. The Women's League of the ruling African National Congress issued a statement, quote, "We are saddened and angered by the loss of another woman's life to violence. We call for justice for Reeva Steenkamp and for all women who suffer abuse," end quote.
Yes, and that's good. Hopefully they're putting their money where their mouth is. And on the domestic violence, yes, 100% I agree that the country needs to really look at itself. But gun ownership, though, I can tell you one thing, Mike. I have 2 working legs, and if I lived there, I'd have a gun at home for protection. And in fact, I have a lot of South African friends, and I think all of them probably have a gun at home.
I have also learned similar things about South Africa and gun ownership in regard to the feeling of safety. So the fact that Oscar Pistorius had a gun at all wasn't unusual.
It's not an unusual thing at all. It's not, yeah.
Internationally, the case was viewed through the lens of celebrity and justice. Would Oscar Pistorius receive special treatment because of his fame? Was this a tragic accident or something more sinister? The questions swirled, but the answers would have to wait. In the immediate days after the shooting, the Steenkamp family maintained a dignified silence in public, asking for privacy as they processed their grief. Their initial statement read, quote, "Without offending the media or any well-meaning persons, we would like to ask that our privacy be respected during this difficult time," end quote. When Pistorius publicly described the shooting as a, quote, "devastating accident," the Steenkamps refused to engage with his characterization, choosing not to comment directly on his words. Reeva's cousin, Kim Martin, later described hearing the news on the radio while on her way to work. The initial report was so shocking that she recalled, quote, "The minute he said his name, I jumped in the front seat and I froze. And the next words were, has shot his girlfriend. And I said to my husband, I hope to God he's cheating on Reeva," end quote. For the Steenkamp family, the loss was immediate and all-consuming. Kim Martin would later say, quote, "It's ruined our whole family. It's ruined Auntie June and Uncle Barry. Reeva was everything to them," end quote. Reeva's parents, June and Barry Steenkamp, were left searching for answers in the aftermath. June Steenkamp, speaking to the Times in the days after the shooting, voiced the family's anguish and confusion. Quote, "Why? Why my little girl? Why did this happen? Why did he do this?" she asked. The suddenness of Reeva's death was overwhelming. Quote, "Just like that, she's gone," June said. "In the blink of an eye and a single breath, the most beautiful person who ever lived is no longer here," end quote. The family gathered in Port Elizabeth, Reeva's hometown, to mourn privately, with her brother Adam Steenkamp saying, quote, "But at the moment it's family coming together, and the one person who would be the strongest, who held us all together, is unfortunately not here anymore, and that's my sister," end quote. From the beginning, the Steenkamp family harbored doubts about Oscar Pistorius' account of what happened that night. While Pistorius insisted he'd mistaken Reeva for an intruder, the Steenkamps were unconvinced. June Steenkamp, in particular, has been vocal about her skepticism. Years later, she expressed her beliefs about what had happened that night. She said, quote, "There was a row. Neighbors heard screaming, a woman scream, Reeva's scream. I believe the neighbors. I believe that Reeva wanted to leave him that night and ran to the toilet in fear to hide from him," end quote. The intense media attention surrounding the case compounded the Steenkamp family's pain. As the story dominated headlines worldwide, the family found themselves at the center of a media storm, their grief unfolding in the public eye. Still, their doubts about Oscar's explanation persisted. June Steenkamp's belief in Reeva's fear that night and her conviction that her daughter's death was not a mere accident became a central part of the family's quest for truth and justice.
And it would have been hard because they're up against a, quote, hero in so many people's eyes.
Yeah.
So getting that truth out about the person that killed her daughter would have been tough. And she probably had to put up with a lot of crap from people.
Yeah, look at what Oscar Pistorius is known for. He's a Paralympian. He's the first Olympian who ran any race with prosthetic legs. That's a big, tall mountain to climb, but good for June for sticking to her beliefs and just being clear over and over again.
Yeah.
This guy isn't what you think he is.
Yeah.
Oscar Pistorius' trial began in March 2014, just over a year after he shot and killed Reeva through that locked bathroom door in his Pretoria home. The case gripped South Africa and the world, with every development broadcast live and scrutinized in the media. Oscar Pistorius, who had inspired millions as a double amputee Olympian, now faced a charge of murder. He insisted that he had mistaken Reeva for an intruder, a claim that would have to be tested under South Africa's unique legal system, where judges, not juries, decide guilt or innocence. Presiding over the trial was Judge Thokozile Masipa, who listened to months of testimony from forensic experts, neighbors, and Oscar Pistorius himself. Emotional breakdowns and inconsistencies marked the athlete's time on the stand. As one legal analysis observed, quote, he performed poorly. He was either not well prepared for this ordeal by his counsel, or he rejected the advice he was given. In the end result, he was a surprisingly poor witness and a particularly evasive one who damaged his own case while on the stand, end quote.
One word, ego.
Yep, narcissist.
It kind of shows what he is, right?
People who can't take responsibility for what they have done are not going to be good witnesses.
No.
Because they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
In September 2014, Judge Masipa delivered her verdict. She found Oscar Pistorius not guilty of murder, but guilty of culpable homicide, the South African equivalent of manslaughter. Quote, the state has not proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the accused is guilty of premeditated murder. There are just not enough facts to support such a finding, she said. However, she ruled that Pistorius had acted with recklessness and negligence, sentencing him to 5 years in prison. The verdict was met with disbelief and anger from many quarters, particularly from the Steenkamp family and advocates for victims of domestic violence. Prosecutors immediately signaled their intent to appeal, calling the sentence, quote, shockingly light, and arguing that the judge had erred in applying the law regarding intent and foreseeability. The prosecution's appeal focused on a key point of South African law, dolus eventualis, which holds that a person can be found guilty of murder if they foresaw the possibility their actions could cause death and proceeded anyway. The Supreme Court of Appeal reviewed the case and in December 2015 overturned the culpable homicide conviction, substituting it with a conviction for murder. Judge Eric Leach, speaking for the court, was unequivocal, quote, as a result of the errors of law referred to and on a proper appraisal of the facts, Pistorius ought to have been convicted not of culpable homicide, but of murder, end quote. Pistorius was ordered back to prison, and in July 2016 he was resentenced to 6 years for murder, a sentence again criticized as too lenient for the gravity of the crime. Prosecutors appealed once more, and in November 2017 the Supreme Court of Appeal dramatically increased Pistorius' sentence to 13 years and 5 months. The court ruled that the earlier 6-year sentence was shockingly lenient and failed to reflect the seriousness of the offense. Legal analyst Ulrich Rue remarked, quote, if one looks at what the law states, and given the fact that murder does carry the minimum sentence of 15 years in prison, I think the decision could be vindicated, end quote.
Yeah, I just wonder if this lenient sentence was because of who he was.
I think partially, yeah.
He was big. He was really big, right? And the justice system has to be able to separate itself from that and just look at the facts and not who the person standing is in society.
I don't know what factors come into play when they're sentencing in South Africa specifically, but I know there are factors like that here in Canada, that they do look at the person's character and that kind of thing when sentencing, or if they have any, look at Gladue reports that are related to sentencing of Indigenous people. There are factors that are taken into account. Whether or not we agree with them is a whole other matter, but that's what's happening.
Flip side, you could be, you know what? You're a sports star.
Mm-hmm.
You have failed.
Right.
Because you're a hero, you're going to get a harsher sentence because you should be setting a better example.
That's fair enough, too. That's what
I would have done. No, I wouldn't. I'd just throw the book at him, though.
Matthew is very throw the bookie.
I'm throw the bookie today.
Yeah. You always are. Really?
Am I? Yeah.
Yes, you are. You tend to sway that way.
I like fairness, but I do tend to throw the book at them. Yeah.
The new sentence was backdated to July 2016, and Pistorius was informed he would have to serve at least half of a 7-year sentence before being eligible for parole. During this time, he was transferred between 2 correctional facilities, both on the outskirts of Pretoria. Pistorius's years behind bars were a contrast of notoriety and isolation. He participated in restorative justice programs, including a meeting with Reeva's father, Barry Steenkamp, in June 2022. This meeting was part of South Africa's parole process, emphasizing reconciliation and harm acknowledgement. Pistorius reportedly expressed remorse, telling a television interviewer, quote, "I did take Reeva's life, and I have to live with it. I can smell the blood. I can feel the warmness of it on my hands, and to know that it's your fault, that it's what you've done, I feel the same pain. I feel that same hate for myself. I feel that same difficulty in understanding this, and I look back and I always think, how did this possibly happen?" End quote. In November 2023, a parole board agreed Oscar Pistorius should be released, and on January 5, 2024, after serving nearly 11 years, he was freed from prison under strict parole conditions. The South African Department of Correctional Services confirmed, quote, "He was admitted into the system of community corrections and is now at home," end quote. Pistorius remains under supervision until December 2029, must report to a parole officer, and is required to attend gender-based violence classes and continue anger management therapy. His release reignited intense debate across South Africa and around the world. For Reeva Steenkamp's family, the legal proceedings brought little comfort. Watching the verdicts and appeals unfold, her parents, June and Barry, endured a public and private agony. After Pistorius' release, June Steenkamp issued a statement that captured the family's enduring pain. Quote, "Has there been justice for Reeva? Has Oscar served enough time? There can never be justice if your loved one is never coming back, and no amount of time served will bring Reeva back. We who remain behind are the ones serving a life sentence." End quote. June also expressed concern about Oscar's anger issues and the safety of any woman who might come into contact with him. The family's grief was compounded by the death of Barry Steenkamp in 2023. June reflected, quote, "My dear Barry left this world utterly devastated by the thought that he had failed to protect his daughter. I've no doubt that he died of a broken heart." End quote.
And that's sad because, of course, he couldn't have done anything, but that feeling that he might have carried is just incredibly sad that he died that way.
Yeah. Amid their heartbreak, the Steenkamp family channeled their energy into a powerful legacy, the Reeva Rebecca Steenkamp Foundation. Founded in Reeva's memory, the organization is dedicated to empowering women and children, raising awareness about gender-based violence, and providing practical support to victims. The foundation's mission is clear. Quote, "We strive to be Reeva's voice and continue her work to educate the world against the abuse of women and children, to educate women of their self-worth and right to a safe environment, to inform victims of abuse of the resources available to them, and to empower these women through education and skills development to become self-supporting." End quote. The foundation runs programs such as Reeva's Packs, which provide educational guides and resources for victims and their families, and the Reeva Girls Bursary, awarded annually to a young woman pursuing her studies. June Steenkamp has become an outspoken advocate, using her voice to, quote, "raise awareness of the horrific statistics of violence and abuse against women and children not only in South Africa but around the world," end quote. The foundation also works directly with schools, teaching girls about their rights, healthy relationships, and self-worth, and providing legal and psychological support to victims. June's early conviction regarding Oscar's guilt was rooted in her maternal intuition and the evidence and testimonies that emerged in the aftermath. Quote, "The evidence in court leaves me with no doubt that he knew it was Reeva behind the toilet door when he fired 4 black Talon bullets through that door," adding, "He knows guns, and he knew what those bullets would do to my beautiful daughter. He knew it would kill her." End quote. A foundation beneficiary, Janet Beckett, shared how the organization changed her life. Quote, "I was the bursary recipient in 2019, which assisted greatly in getting through my final year of studies and a bit into my articles as well. Other than that, I've been able to be surrounded by and learn from so many amazing women and men who are all committed to the fight against gender-based violence." End quote.
Yeah, like June's the force for good.
Yeah.
You know, I have a lot of appreciation for her flourishing out of this, I guess is the word I want to use.
Making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
100%.
And not just curling up and being sad, but being a force for good out of all of this.
I'm sure she's sad as well.
But leveraging that to be a force of good.
Using her energy in that way
That's positive, right?
Yep.
She's a hero.
Every year, on the anniversary of Reeva's death, her family gathers at one of her favorite beaches to scatter roses in her memory. As of May 2025, Oscar Pistorius lives under parole in South Africa, subject to community corrections and regular monitoring. His public appearances are rare, and he remains a deeply polarizing figure in South Africa. June Steenkamp, meanwhile, has made her wishes clear. Quote, "My only desire is that I will be allowed to live my last years in peace, with my focus remaining on the Reeva Steenkamp Foundation to continue Reeva's legacy." End quote. For the Steenkamp family and many South Africans, true justice will always be measured not by the years Oscar Pistorius served in prison, but by the ongoing work to prevent such tragedies and support those left behind. And that's it for Dark Poutine episode 367, Road Trip, The Murder of Reeva Steenkamp.
That's right. It's time for voicemails. You can leave us a message at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see who called us this week.
So Matthew's just showing me his lovely Temu purchase of smiley face button-down shirt with black shorts with a smiley face.
And the black shorts have a little smiley face as well.
They're very cool. And what sort of material is it? Is it rayon? Is it?
Well, it was cheap, so let's call it plastique.
How long does it take for things to ship from Temu?
I don't know. I haven't done it in a long time.
Oh, okay.
But because my ass is broke. But and besides, I bought enough shirts to last me a year.
Oh.
Yeah, it takes a while, but the prices were so good that who cares if it takes a while?
Yeah.
I don't need, do I need a shirt right now?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're doing voicemails now. Why are
we
talking
are
about my shirt?
I was just enjoying your shirt. You look like a smiley face bumblebee.
There you go.
Yeah. Here is our voicemail for this week.
Hey, Mike, Matt, it's So. Hope you're having a good day. Just wanted to say something before I gave you a suggestion. I absolutely love Dark Poutine. I find murder so interesting and want to find out what goes through the minds of criminals and such. I also really love apparitions and the supernatural. That brings me to my suggestion. Now, I know you don't usually do ghost stories, but I suggest looking at Haunted Canada by Joel A. Sutherland. It's all about true ghost stories, and quite a few stories have murder and crime. You may have to do some more research, but maybe not, depending on how much info you want. It would be putting two of my favorite things together, and I would be so happy, but just a suggestion. Anyway, love ya, and go shit in your toque.
There you go. So, Matthew doesn't like the ghost stories so much, but I love them. So, and ghost stories and crime, count me in. I have read a lot of that stuff already by that particular author. So, yeah, it's on my list. Anyway, so
the thing is, I listen to a lot of horror podcasts,
Yes.
like ghost stories and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I have a hard time doing it as part of any show with a true something added to it.
Right. Sure. So anyway, that person didn't give us her name, so whatever. But what do you think she does wherever she is? And where is she in the world, Matthew? Did she say? She didn't.
I think she is in...
Somewhere in Canada.
She's in Eastern Ontario.
Okay. Eastern Ontario, all right.
Yeah. And I think she's a Crown prosecutor.
A Crown prosecutor who's interested in ghost stories.
Yes.
Well, there you go. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's she's specializing in, because some ghosts were murderers. Right. So she specializes in putting the dead in jail. Can you? Yeah,
I can hear Steve walking around. He's like, I'm tapping out.
No, Justin Steve just had his lunch, and when Steve has his lunch, he wants to come in here to lick my leg because I'm a salt lick after he eats his lunch.
Okay.
So he just went clompity clomp in here and then did a big yawn.
Oh, well.
Anyway, yeah, so she puts ghosts in jail, essentially, to summarize it.
It's where they belong.
That's it for this week's voicemails. Again, you can leave us one at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you, even if it is just to say hi and to tell us to go shit in our hats. If you're stumped for what to chat with us about, a quick story is welcome.
All right. And we do have a Donut Money donor this week, and that person is Karen Ross. Karen Ross, she doesn't say where she's from, so we'll get to that. But Karen says, thanks for the respectful and interesting coverage of Canadian crime, emphasis on respectful. Well, thank you. That is much appreciated. I am glad that it comes across in the way it is intended.
Karen lives in Detroit.
She lives in Detroit, okay.
And she's the unknown fourth member of the Supremes.
The unknown fourth member of the Supremes. Is it Diana Ross and the Supremes? Is it? Or
yeah, it started as the Supremes and it was Diana Ross and the
Diana
Supremes.
Ross and her big hair.
Yeah.
Well,
I've seen Diana Ross 3 times.
I like Motown stuff. And
yeah, I had a boyfriend that loves, he used to say whenever he's going for a job interview or needed to do something where he felt insecure, okay, this is super gay, he would say, what would Diana Ross do?
What would Diana Ross do?
Or pretend you're Diana Ross.
What would Diana Ross do in a job interview?
Just be confident,
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much, Karen Ross. Much appreciated, and enjoy your stint in the Supremes. Thanks to all our patrons and Donut Money donors, past and present, for your generosity. It helps to keep the show going. You can become a patron of Dark Poutine at patreon.com/darkpoutine. For a one-time donation, you can send us donut money via PayPal or interact using our email address, darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com. If you don't already subscribe to the show, it would mean a lot if you did. You can easily find Dark Poutine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you haven't gotten yours yet, my 2 books are available to order via links on the Dark Poutine website or anywhere fine books are sold. And speaking of darkpoutine.com, check it out for show notes and other cool stuff. We'd appreciate it if you gave Dark Poutine a like or a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Most importantly, thank you for listening. Tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. And that is it for this episode of Dark Poutine. So until next time, don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.